running. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The streaming's now live, so if you'd like to commence the meeting, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this morning's meeting. Alison, could I ask you to do the roll call before we start, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Certainly will. Item 1 on the agenda, as I say, is the attendance at the meeting. I've already received apologies from Councillor Paley, and I believe Councillor McEwen has a mayoral engagement, so may be unable to join us. Can I ask councillors just to say if they're here, please? Councillor Durham.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Cruddas.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Here.
And as I say, I mentioned I've got apologies from Councillor Paley and Councillor McEwen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest from anyone? No. Can we approve the minutes held on the 16th of September 2020? Any seconder? I'll second that. Yeah. Thank you. First item on the agenda is an audit of accounts, a verbal update by Peter Carrick. Peter?
Thanks, Chair. It's just, as members are aware, the annual audit of accounts and annual governance statement on today's agenda. But unfortunately, we're not in a position to enable our external auditor to sign off the accounts. Having said that, I'd just like to assure members that there's nothing untoward about this, and it's more a consequence of the current times we're living in rather than there being a problem with the accounts, with everything seeming to take much longer these days. The annual governance statement, the AGS, needs to be approved at the same time as the statement of accounts, and due to the global pandemic, the statutory deadline for signing both these documents off is being moved back to the 30th of November. So with that in mind, in conjunction with the Chair, we've arranged a special audit committee on the 18th of November that will have the two outstanding items on, and I asked members to agree to that decision. We do have Helen Henshaw from EY here, and I hope Helen would sort of give some context around where we are at the moment with the audit, please.
I will,
there,
Peter.
Helen.
Would you like me to do that now? Would you like?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I am. Yes. Would you like me to do that now? Would you like me to do that as we present our report on the agenda? How would you like that to take place?
Oh, you may as well link it in with Peter's comment if you would. So
Sure, no problem. So Peter's absolutely right. There's nothing untoward about us not being in a position to sign off the audit and the financial statements today. As you will appreciate, the conduct of an external audit entirely remotely, as wonderful as Microsoft Teams is significantly more challenging than doing it in a face-to-face environment. Add together on top of that the various extra pieces of work and considerations that we need to make, given the additional pressures which COVID-19 are putting on the finances of councils, and are effectively requiring additional audit procedures. It's just meant that there's been an elongated audit process this year, and this is not specific to Darlington. This is being experienced across the entirety of local government. So, as you will see on the agenda today, we have brought our audit results report, and I feel confident in doing that because, as Peter mentioned, the audit is substantially complete. And actually, some of the matters that were listed in our report as being outstanding, we have managed to close off in the period between submitting the report to the papers and today. But there is still a small amount of procedures that need to be finished on our part, and working together with management, we're going to do that in order that we can get everything signed off and done and dusted by the 18th of November.
And can we take it there'll be no repercussions on the council for knocking this back to November the 18th?
No, because as Peter mentioned, actually in recognition of the difficulties that COVID-19 will bring to this entire process, previously the publication suggested date was the end of July. That has been moved back to the end of November. In actual fact, even that end of November date is not a requirement to have an audit opinion at that date. It's a requirement for the council to publish its accounts, preferably with an audit opinion attached to them. But if that's not possible, an explanation as to why not. So there's no repercussions whatsoever for the council.
Right. Thank you for that, Helen. The councillors, are you happy with this special meeting on the 18th of November? Yeah. Scott, I can see you, Scott. Are you okay, Paul? Councillor Baldwin?
Yeah, do we need to vote on it, Chair, rather than just...
Is it a vote, Alison?
Yeah, if members want to just raise the hand if they're in favour, I can make a fifth formal vote, yes.
Can we have a vote in favour of the meeting on the 18th, the special meeting on the 18th of November? Can we put our hands up? All in favour, that's fine. So we will convene on the 18th of November to hear this update. Thank you. Item 5 is the annual governance statement by Peter Carrick, please. Peter?
Sorry, Chair. That was included in my last one. That goes together with the annual audit of accounts. So that's been deferred to November's special meeting as well. Thanks.
Yep. We're now moving on to item 9. I'm going to put item 9 in for the Information Governance Programme Progress Report from Lee Downey. Are you there, Lee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the Information Governance Programme Progress Report. So the Systems and Information Governance Groups required to report on a 6-monthly basis to Audit Committee regarding our progress around our Information Governance Programme. And the ongoing delivery of our programme essentially gives us the assurance required to reduce our information risks to an appropriate level. The key areas of work are listed in the summary on the front page of the report. So in that, number 1 is preparing for data protection after the EU exit transition period ends on the 31st of December. The second one is our review of our information asset register and our privacy notices, which inform the public what we do with their personal data. The third one is the provision of advice around ensuring our CCTVs compliant with both the Data Protection Act and the Protection of Freedoms Act. And the last one is our ongoing work in terms of ensuring our targets are met for completing our online mandatory training courses around information governance. The highest area of priority at present is preparing for the end of the EU transition period, although we don't anticipate this will cause us huge problems as a local authority. So in terms of that one, on the 15th of October, SIG approved an action plan which we developed in response to the government's guidance around preparing for data protection after the transition period ends. And it really just aims to mitigate as far as possible the impact of the UK not being granted an adequacy decision by the EU before the 31st of December. So what that in effect would mean is that the EU wouldn't consider the UK to have appropriate data protection legislation, and so we would be able to transfer data to the EU, but they wouldn't be able to transfer data back under the current arrangements. The key area here is our data processes. So, for example, Microsoft store the Teams chat in the EU. A couple of our other suppliers may have the data centres in the EU. We're not anticipating it to cause a huge problem, like I said. And what we're doing is we're writing to those suppliers as part of that action plan to ask them what their plans are, and, you know, essentially, if there are any issues arise, put in place measures to ensure that data can continue to flow come the 1st of January. So that's the key area of work. The second area is around updating our information asset registers. So we produced what's called a record of processing activities under GDPR, and we're expanding that to include all our non-personal data in this review. And that's really going to be a key document in underpinning some of our migration to Microsoft 365 and realising some of the efficiencies that can be had there. And it will also support our preparation for the EU transition period ending. The next area is CCTV. So essentially, I've updated the advice I issued as a data protection officer previously to include the Surveillance Camera Commissioner's advice around ensuring we adhere to the Protection of Freedoms Act. And that work's ongoing. So the advice has been issued, and we're supporting all those services that do use CCTV to ensure it's, you know, properly governed. And the last item in the report is our training and awareness. So there was an issue identified by internal audit in terms of the figures we provide in this report only relate to those IT users, and they don't include those, or historically haven't included those individuals who don't have access to IT. It's not hugely concerning because obviously those people who don't have access to IT are less likely to be processing personal data, and particularly sensitive personal data. But there are scenarios in which they may be processing personal data. So as a result of this being identified, HR have already contacted the managers responsible for those staff who don't have access to a computer. They've asked them to prioritise the data protection and social media training, and they've obviously provided them with paper copies of that. There's a revised table in Appendix 2 which shows the position as of the 15th of October. And essentially a completion rate of over 95% remains our target. The current position shows resources have met the target in relation to information security and data protection, but overall we haven't met the target in relation to the 3 modules. While that's the case, it is worth noting the social media module was only launched in April, and obviously the impact of COVID has, kind of meant less people have completed that, but we're working towards that. And in order to drive up the rates, we're introducing a traffic light system within Academy 10, the training programme, so managers can see which staff have and haven't completed the modules, and obviously they can ask them to do that. So as you can see in the table in Appendix 2, there's now a section on the bottom showing the non-Academy 10 users or the non-IT users. The information security module is not applicable because they don't use IT equipment. The social media module is, but we don't have the completion figures as yet. And in relation to the DPA 2018, the completion rates are at 30.4%, which obviously should be improved on by next time the report comes, because like I say, HR have already contacted the managers and asked them to get the staff to prioritise these. So in terms of the conclusion, we haven't implemented the majority of our GDPR compliance programme, which was based on the ICO's advice. Our information risks have been significantly reduced, and they're now at an acceptable level. So it's recommended that the implementation of the information governance programme be noted. And if there's any questions people have, I'd be quite happy to answer them.
Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Baldwin.
You're on mute, Councillor Baldwin.
Okay, I thought you'd be pleased I was muted, but clearly not. Just around the social media module, social services, it looks as though they're dragging their feet, which is something we've experienced in the past. They seem to be so busy delivering what they deliver that things that are important away from them seem to get missed at times. I wonder if we could just keep a little check or support them in helping them be the biggest percentage rather than the smallest, just about. Thanks, Chair.
Mr. Downey, Mick?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, HR do produce regular statistics, and we'll raise that with Jane Kofanowski as the Assistant Director, and highlight what the completion rate are, and I can let them know it was noted at Audit Committee that it was lower, and ask that they make concerted efforts to drive that up.
I think we'd appreciate that. I think, as Councillor Baldwin intimated there, really, we appreciate social services will be particularly busy at this time with coronavirus and other things, but I think we'd all agree that it does need lifting. Yeah, for everyone. Just on paragraph 18, when we have not met its target for the 3 modules, would you be setting a date on that for a completion date?
We haven't yet, but we obviously this report comes on a 6-monthly basis, so we could contact those staff and aim to have that in place come the next report to Audit Committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Downey.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So with that in mind, no more questions. Are we minded to acknowledge the report put in by Mr. Downey? Everyone happy with it? Councillor Baldwin, okay. Where's Councillor Scott gone? Okay, thank you very much for that.
I've got a question, Chair.
Mr. Downey. Item 6, ITC strategy.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I think Councillor Durham said he had a question. He's got his hand up.
Oh, I haven't got him on my screen. Sorry about that.
Not a
Councillor
problem.
Durham.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. Lee, just a question. Could you just expand on what the content of the social media module?
It's not a module I wrote, Councillor Durham. It's actually written by HR, but I have done it, so I can give you some indication. It's around ensuring that the information you post in your kind of personal social media life is appropriate. That you wouldn't post any information that would bring the council into disrepute. That you only use. So it's around being mindful of your own actions as a private individual, and the posts you may share on social media. It's also around making sure that if you're promoting things on behalf of the council, that you do it through the appropriate council run social media channels, through the comms unit, and that that you link in with the comms unit to make sure anything's set up it is on an appropriate channel. So it really kind of mirrors the code of conduct, I suppose, in the non-online world, I suppose, just on the online world, to make it clear that those behaviours we would expect of officers kind of are both mirrored online and in real life, if you like. So, yeah.
Thanks again, Mr. Downey. We do believe you're on leave, so even a double thanks for giving us your time.
That's not a problem. Thank you.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day anyway.
Thank you. All right.
Item 6 is Ian Miles on ICT strategy and the implementation progress. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report, as members will be aware, is a regular update on the continued implementation of the ICT strategy, and I'll outline against the 3 priorities. In terms of ICT governance and service development, the Systems Information Governance Group, chaired by the Managing Director, continues to oversee the ICT work plan, which represents all the projects the ICT service are undertaking. And since the last update to members, ICT services have continued to pass the payment card industry compliance checks, as well as continuing to be certified to the government's Public Services Network programme. And we've also been successfully audited by BSI for both the Information Security and Quality Management System Standards certifications we hold. And ICT also continued to achieve full assurance on our internal audits. Our Service Development Programme, our internal programme, takes input from these compliance regimes as well as other factors. So the actions arising from any inspection or audit is factored into the work that we do. In terms of the second priority area, ICT strategic architecture, progress has been made on a number of projects since the last update to this committee, and these are listed in the report in paragraph 11. We've just completed the rollout of our new network across the council, and we continue to monitor and improve our external defences. Internal system and server upgrades have taken place, as well as our improvements to our PC remote connectivity systems, backup regimes, and the continuation of our desktop replacement programme. A lot has been achieved over the year. The remaining priority area is council service development. Combined, the service-based information system strategies and the ICT work plan define and drive the customer projects within the ICT service. These ICT projects underpin the council's business change activities, as well as the architecture projects that I mentioned earlier. ICT have also completed 20 service-based projects during the year, and in addition, we've implemented a new contact centre telephony system, and as Lee mentioned earlier, continued to develop our exploitation of the Microsoft 365 products. And finally, Chair, for the committee's benefit, I thought it'd be worth mentioning our response in the COVID-19 pandemic. Like everyone else, in March, the ICT service began to respond to the pandemic by socially distancing and working from home. Yet at the same time, we were rolling out hundreds of laptops and soft phone installs across the workforce, implementing and promoting Microsoft Teams as a means of remote communication and collaboration, increasing the capacity in our firewall infrastructure to handle the instant surge in remote connections. We went from hundreds of people connected today to thousands, literally within a couple of days, within a week. We had the challenge of sourcing equipment such as laptops and headsets, which at the time were the pasta and toilet roll of the ICT world. We delivered ICT solutions to the council's support hub in terms of supporting the needy. And there were other achievements, but as importantly, we successfully continued to deliver our day-to-day services and the project work, and we did that remotely, including standing up our service desk, again, with people working from home. Finally, none of what we delivered, which was of both Darlington and Stockton councils and the Combined Authority and other central customers, could have been achieved without the dedication and professionalism of not only the central ICT team, but the other key services Central provides. Our investment in our systems and our staff has paid dividends, Chair. And thank you, Chair. Take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? No. Well, I think I've got to agree with you. I know that from the last few months I've had a few problems with computers and ringing into IT support has been really good. I'm particularly impressed when you refer to remaining calm and level-headed throughout. I can assure you when they deal with me on the laptops, they need to be level-headed when they're trying to sort my problem. But thank you very much, Ian, for that, and much appreciated. Moving on to
Chair. Sorry for my lateness. I had a personal matter.
Hello, Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, I do apologise.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Did you hear the report from Ian there? Did you have any questions?
I heard it, yeah. I mean, IT for me is working well, but I can understand that it's probably under a bit of stress and strain at the moment.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item 7, annual grant certification report by Peter Carrick. Peter?
Yes, thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, this report was due to go in Audit Committee in April, but due to the meeting being cancelled, it obviously didn't get. So we brought it back on for approval, just to sort of for completeness. And Helen's going to talk you through the EY's report. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Actually, I'm going to let my colleague Michael talk you through the detail of the report, but just as an overview, it's obviously very important for the committee that they recognise the importance of the independence of the external auditor. So part of the reason for bringing this report to this committee is to make you fully aware of all the other work that we do for the council, in addition to the external audit opinion, so that you are able to get comfortable about the scope of that work. And form a view as to whether it would impact our independence. I'm going to pass over to Michael now and talk you through the detail.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Just conscious this is my first audit committee at Darlington, so brief introduction. Michael Mason, and I'm based in our government and public sector team in Newcastle. I took over as the audit manager when Vusi left EY. So, as Peter said, this is the certifications report for 18-19, and it covers the key findings from our work. The certification report that we do is the housing benefit subsidy claim, the teacher's pension return, pooling receipts, and also a Homes England audit checklist. So if I take you to page 5 of the report, this outlines our findings in respect of the housing benefit subsidy claim. So the first thing that we do is check and do an update from our findings from 17-18 to see if there's been any similar errors identified in 18-19. So as you'll see in the report there, in 17-18 we noted issues in relation to the import of ESA income. Our testing in 18-19 didn't identify any similar errors. Now, findings from 1819. The first one, it's in relation to the modified schemes non-HRA rent rebate. So we identified that there was one claim included in this cell, but the claim had actually been deleted from the Northgate system and it was manually input into the claim form. So as a result, we were unable to test that claim. We did perform additional procedures to satisfy ourselves that there wasn't similar errors included in the claim form. So we did those procedures, and as a result, we're treating that as an isolated error.
Okay.
On page 7 of the report, this outlines the other certification work we performed in 1819. So the first one was the teacher's pension return. We identified one finding on the teacher's pension return, whereby there was some errors in the rates that had been used. Most of them were down to rounding, but there was one where teachers' contributions had been understated by £37.89, and that was because there was a teacher included on the default rate of 9.6% for a month, when in fact they should have been on 7.4%. We noted no further issues on our work on the teacher's pension return. We also completed the 2018-19 Homes England compliance audit checklist. We complete that work through the Homes England system and submit that. Again, we didn't identify any issues from our work in that area. And finally, we did the housing pooling return. Separate reports being sent to management on that, but again, found no issues on our work on that return. And just finally, on page 11, we outline that we're going to be doing the same certification claims for 1920. So we'll be reporting on them at some next year's Audit Committee. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Fine. Any questions from any councillors? Yeah. I mean, just a very small thing on those minor errors on the teacher's pension. I mean, they are minor errors. I mean, had you not picked them up, what would be the implications? Any or nothing? Or would it just been?
So when we, as part of our testing, the procedures are very kind of prescribed. So it's a case of effectively multiplying across the rate. Should they not have been identified, then the teacher's pension would come back to the council to basically get an explanation on what the difference is. So we report on the difference. Management includes a response on what the difference relates to, and that whole report gets submitted to the teacher's pension agency.
Fine, thank you for that. Happy to receive the report, councillors. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Moving on to item 7, which is the anti-fraud and corruption strategy. Mr. Barber.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the annual refresh of the fraud and corruption strategy. I'll just run you through some of the actions we undertook during the last year, which is in page 28 of your pack. So we continue to review the intranet pages. We've included some training and some guidance materials for staff on that. We keep updating those as and when new videos or training comes online. We continue to review the fraud risk assessment. I'll come on to that in a minute. Controls auditing is now in place, so we have some specific controls identified that are there to ensure we have arrangements in place to detect and prevent fraud, and we can report on those separately now. And there's a whole host of awareness campaigns have been run with posters, videos, and publications in the briefing, and that is some of the work we've done over the year. If I jump down to the strategy itself, the format will be familiar to most members of the committee. I thank the chair for reviewing the foreword and agreeing to include that on there. It adds a bit of weight to the whole strategy. One thing I do want to point out is, with the work we've done to date so far and the levels of fraud we've been identifying over the last year or so, we feel the likelihood of fraud has actually decreased. So we've actually reduced the risk score. It was a 12, it's now down to 9. So we are making progress towards hitting that desired outcome. In truth, the remainder of the strategy hasn't really changed much. We just have an ongoing action plan there. A lot of the actions in there now are ongoing. The only real piece of work that's new is the NFI matching process is due to commence again. So we've sent those files off and we're waiting the results of those. We're going to get those around January, February time. We'll then action whatever results come out of there. From there, I'll take any questions.
Good. Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And apologies if I've missed this. You mentioned an assessment that the risk of fraud had reduced and that had a consequent impact on your level of resourcing to be deployed. What's the basis for the assessment of reduction of risk?
Yes, Councillor. It's just experience and knowledge of what cases of fraud we are identifying, to be honest. And in truth, we haven't identified much in terms of fraud within the authority over the last 12 to 18 months. The main areas continue to be council tax and benefit fraud. But even then, the council tax numbers are reducing. And it will be a point that will, in terms of things like single person discount, there's only so much we'll ever be able to do on that. So it's just experience and knowledge that of the fraud cases that have come through. We feel that the risk has reduced. We're not finding any big instances of fraud within the council.
Are you okay, Councillor?
May I have a follow-up, Chair?
Of course.
I absolutely wouldn't disagree with that assessment, and that's an operational assessment based on experience, etc. A follow-up question would be, is there any evidence, not necessarily from Darlington, but from your wider networks? I presume you're linked into other audit colleagues, whether it's through professional associations, etc., around any emerging patterns of fraud during COVID since March, relating to local authority activity?
Yes, Councillor. We are actually awaiting a report from CIPFA. They have just run their fraud questionnaire exercise. That completed at the end of September, I think it was, to have the results. So we're waiting for the results of that to give us a better picture on the national picture. But certainly from the last couple of reports they've produced, we're not really seeing any new emerging areas, if I'm honest. It's the same ones over and over again, so we're not seeing anything at the moment. But as I say, I'm awaiting the results of this last set of surveys.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Credas.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just this strategy may not spread to these matters, but there's been anecdotal evidence of fraud in the way the monies that the councils have been distributing in the way of grants to businesses and other deserving causes during the pandemic. Would we expect our anti-fraud corruption strategy to capture some of that information, or is it something that it would be dealt with by central government and external services?
No, it does cover that area. We submit a return each month to central government, which includes a number of identified cases of fraud or fraudulent attempts, and the numbers are actually very low for Darlington Council. So we don't perceive that as an increased risk area, and in truth, we've managed to stop most of those before any payments have been made. And with the checks that we have in place, they've been very robust, and they've had good systems set up to check on any claims made. So we don't perceive there to be any increased risk.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, isn't it? Because since COVID, decisions have been almost made on the hoof, and a lot of money has come and gone from government into business and so on. So I think it's a very good question. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, you just talked about their systems capturing potential instances of fraud. Have we got any data that can be shared with this committee?
I'll have to check with the department, but we should have some data because, as I say, we submit returns each month. I don't have the figures to hand, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to share those returns, I don't think.
Thank you.
Is it possible to bring it to the next committee, Mr. Barber?
Yes, I'll arrange that, Chair.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Durham?
I am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for those. One of my pet things, of course, is we set targets, but we don't seem to have a start and end date. Can we possibly start doing that? Otherwise, targets become wish lists, really.
Yes, so the actions where there is a defined end date, we have put a date in, Chair, but a lot of the actions are just ongoing, so we refresh things as and when new information comes to light, or so, like, for example, the one I'm looking at is about the fraud and corruption risk being on the risk register. It's on the register, so we continue to review that. So it is in there as an ongoing action because it will continue to be reviewed. So I put targets in where I believe we can. Other work, I believe, is just day-to-day ongoing work. So that's why they're just on there as ongoing, really.
All right, so it's constant review.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Councillors, are we okay to accept the report as written? Everyone happy? Thank you. Moving on to item 10, mid-year prudential indicators and Treasury management monitoring report by Peter, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is excuse me. This is the second of 3 reports each year that we Treasury management that we bring to the Audit Committee because they've got to consider it before it's passed on to Cabinet and Council for approval. The key objective of this report is to provide an update of the 2021 Prudential Indicators and Treasury Management Strategy that was approved by Audit Committee in January. Council's capital spend and Treasury management activities are regulated by legislation and the mandatory Prudential Code, which includes a series of indicators, and the information in the report shows that the Council's capital spending plans and Treasury management activities are both legal, prudent, affordable and sustainable, and they're an integral part of the Council's financial plans. If I can take you to table 2 on page 51 of the report, Chair. It shows that the capital expenditure that we're expecting to spend in the current year, that, as you can see, it's reduced from £45 million in the original estimate to £31 million by the end of the year. I mean, the majority of that is mainly down to the HRA, because of obviously because of the COVID pandemic. There haven't been as much building works going on, and it's mostly been in the housing area, where, as the Chair knows, it's like for Neasham Road, we were supposed to start work in Neasham Road, and that's been deferred back into next year. So it's not as if we're not going to spend that money; it's just being pushed back. It's in slippage into future years. And also on that one, there you can see on the loans to joint ventures. Although I'm saying that our housing program's being pushed back a bit, actually, where our joint ventures, where Esh Homes are building houses, they've actually had quite a lot of activity. So they've got quite a lot of advanced sales in their plots in West Park and in Milton St George. So the money that we've lent them to sort of for infrastructure work, they're now paying that back with interest earlier, so that they don't have to pay as much interest, shall we say. If you go to page 52 in table 3, Chair, that table there shows that the borrowing need for the council's come down from 15.5 million down to sort of £768,000. That again is down to housing, where we have, because housing we're going to effectively borrow for the housing programme, and they haven't actually built all of the houses yet. We don't need that borrowing. That'll be pushed back into future years again. So there might be a need for borrowing, but it'll all be through the HRA. just a quirk on that, just to sort of give a bit of background to that, Chair, that if the HRA borrow, they need to borrow on the strength of the rents of the houses that they build. So they can't actually borrow more than the rents that they're going to charge for the properties that they build for social housing bring in, if that makes sense. Table 4 on page 53 shows the capital financing requirement of 218,317. 218 million, sorry, 317. The capital financing requirement, it is the council's underlying need to borrow. It represents all of the net capital expenditures not being paid for by revenue or other sources yet. The operational boundary is effectively the council's debt. And as you can see, the council's debt in table 4 is £188 million. Projected debt is £188 million, which is not as much as the capital financing requirement. So we're effectively under borrowed, which means that our debt, the debt that we've got, is less than what we need to spend on to fund the capital programme. One of the indicators that we need to get the the committee to approve is the operational boundary, which we in table 4 there we reduce into 188 million, and also the authorised limit, which is the limit that the council cannot borrow above, which is shown in table 6 on page 54. That be reduced to 229 million. Again, most of it is a consequence of the capital programme being pushed back or slippage into future years. One thing I'd like to bring members' attention to is on page 56, it's paragraph 32. And it's a possibility at the moment, but we've been approached by Darlington College with the possibility of them potentially, of us lending them some more money to cover their liabilities, their debt. It's only a possibility at the moment, and it's not definite. But with us being the Audit Committee, being the Governance Committee, we need to sort of bring it to members' attention, because it would need to be approved by Cabinet and Council. But obviously the Governance Committee needs to be aware of that. If it did ever happen, and we can do that through our capital strategy, which was approved by Cabinet and Council in early in the year, we can actually lend money to external organisations for educational purposes. It would be sort of down to due diligence. There would be sort of a lot of work went round the due diligence of it, and there would be state aid rules. We couldn't lend them at cheap rates. We'd have to lend them at state aid rules. Table 10 on page 58. Everything I've been talking about there has all been the debt of the council, which although we do have debt, we do have some investments as well. So table 10 shows the investments that the council has, and the amount is 67.499 million. Some of that, and it's a mixture of that. We have money in banks, we have money in building societies. We actually have money out to other local authorities as well that we've lent to, and we have the property funds. As councillors are aware, we do have £30 million of the property funds that do bring in, and I think this year it's about 2.8%, which is a lot more than we can get in any of the banks that we've got there. Page 12, table 12 on page 59. The financing costs budget is obviously the amount of money that it costs to finance the council's debt. Now, the original budget was 895,000, but as members can see, there's actually there's a projected saving in the current year of £110,000. Now there's a combination of things there. There's less interest because of the global pandemic. One of the benefits of that is it's cheaper to borrow money. But the other side of that is I was mentioned there, our property funds, we're actually getting less than our property funds than we anticipated. But having said that, we're still getting about 1.6% net of our property funds after taking account of borrowing. So they are still quite beneficial to us. But it has produced a £110,000 saving in the medium-term financial plan. We've taken that into account in the new medium-term financial plan that's going to Cabinet in December. And with that, Chair, I think everything else in that report is fine. So can I just move the recommendations in paragraph 6, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor McEwen? You're on mute, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to property fund,
yes,
we are getting a return. I'm conscious that we've been through a pandemic, and that's had an adverse impact on commercial real estate, both retail and office accommodation. I'm presuming that there will be an ongoing appraisal of where investments might lie, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
No, you're quite right. I mean, we do get monthly reports from we have three property funds, and we do get monthly reports from each of them. And you're right, over the last 4 or 5 months, the dividends have been going down. But the latest one, I got one yesterday actually, shows that they're actually starting to go up again. And they're assuring us that the rents that they're, because of the mix of the properties that they've got on all the portfolio, because there's quite a diverse mix in there, the rents are starting to appear. So the dividends are going back up again.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions? So, Peter, you're asking us to acknowledge the report and agree for this operational boundary figure. Is it the 188 million or is it the 229 million? Where have you gone?
It's both, Chair, actually. It's the 188 is the operational boundary and the 229 is the authorised limit.
It's authorised, yeah.
Yeah.
Councillors, can we vote on that? Are we happy with that?
Great. Do we need to raise hands, Chair?
Sorry, do we need to? Sorry, Councillor McEwen, do we need to?
Raise hands.
Yes, please. Well, I can see you in. I've got nodding and I've got raising hands, so I can see you all. That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Item 11, which is the Audit Services Activity Report by Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In truth, there hasn't been much activity since last month.
Right.
Just on the basis that this is only a month. But we have completed some of the work. So the numbers may seem relatively low, but it is, I think it was over a 3-week period. So that would be why. I think the main point in here is that we still continue to have sufficient resources to undertake the work over the next period. One thing I have added into this report, first amendment of many I hope, is there's an overall chart on overall assurance now. So as you'll see, we've got a good level of assurance across a number of key themes across the authority. I think the lowest one on there is at 93%. So again, that is a good level of assurance still. We've just completed quite a large data transfer over the last couple of weeks into a different part of our current system. So I'm hoping that information moving forward will be much richer and fuller than what we've got so far. But yeah, good progress has been made generally.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions, councillors? No, thank you. So accepting the report, everyone happy with that? Yeah, wave hands, thank you. Any supplementary items from anyone? Any questions? No, if I just may add a little bit, Peter is going to organise a training session for the councillors at a later stage. I think it'll do us all a lot of good. So thank you very much for that, Peter. We have no questions, so that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of the today's Audit Committee. Thank you very much for your attendance. I look forward to seeing you the next time round.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye.
Bye now.